Hello everyone, welcome to Musicians Edition for our piano series. I'm the piano teacher here, Evan, and today we're going to go over a crucial piece of sight reading, and that is going to be reading intervals. I'll start with explaining just basic intervals, and then we'll look at some sheets to see how we can apply it to become better readers. Let's go. Let's start with the easy intervals, and just for that term, do remember an interval is just the distance between two notes on our piano. I'd covered tones and semitones prior, and those are also called steps and half steps. And those terms are just used interchangeably to talk about going up or down one or two notes on the piano. It was going up or down one note for semitones, or also called half steps, going up or down two notes for the tone or the whole step. So let's go ahead and add some easy knowledge to work on going up or down to those higher notes, and I'll make it as easy as I can. One more thing to review before we jump into it, intervals can be harmonic or they can be melodic. The difference for that is just whether or not the notes are played at the same time or whether or not they're played one after the other. It's going to be called a harmonic interval if we play notes together at the same time, like playing chords, or a melodic interval if they're being played one after the other, like a singing melody. All right, let's jump into it on the piano. Do you remember the numbers we had gone over for your fingers? The thumb is 1. Index is 2, middle finger is 3, ring finger is 4, and the pinky was number 5. And that was the same for both hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to start off by having our right hand in C position. Our 1 will go on C, 2 on D, 3 on E, 4 on F, and 5 on G. And what's great when we pair these finger numbers with intervals is that the name of the interval from thumb to the other fingers is very easy because it's just the number of that finger. C to D is what's called a second interval. We're playing the 1 and then playing the 2. That's called a second. C to E is a third. C to F is a fourth. C to G is a fifth. That's again the 1 and 5 fingers for a fifth, 1 and 4 for a fourth, 1 and 3, that's a third, and 1 and 2 for a second. And we could go further up. We could reach up to A, and if G was fifth, you can guess that A is just going to be a sixth. And then up to B, if we're starting from C, that would be a seventh. And last one, we can go one higher. From one C to the next highest C is an octave. An octave, also called an eighth. So these intervals, or again, the spacing between these notes, are the same for any starting note. I started on C there, but we can slide our hand over to D or E and do the same thing. I can have my one finger on D, and then D to E would be a second, D to F would be a third, D to G would be a fourth, and D to A would be the fifth. And then once again, D to the higher D would be that full octave or eighth. And that's going up. We can do the same exact thing going down as well too. I can have my left thumb on C, and I can count down to a second, down to a third, down to a fourth, down to a fifth, all the way down to that octave again if I want to. One thing you notice that might be missing would be that first interval. We go straight from C to D and call that a second, but what about the first interval? And that would just be if we actually just play C and play that same note again. We're playing our one finger if our thumb's on C, so we play it again. That's our first interval. And what's a little bit weird about that is there's no zeroth interval. That first interval is really the starting point, or it's called unison, where we just play the same note again. So C to C, first, C to D, second, then third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth or octave. And you'll see I did skip over the black keys while counting these when I started from C as well as when I started from D. We would account for those depending on what the key signature of the piece tells us, aka what notes are actually being included in a piece. We'll assume natural white keys unless the key signature or accidentals in a piece are telling us otherwise. And if that doesn't make too much sense, don't worry, we'll look at some sheets later to practice that. Now let's go ahead and focus on applying intervals to the sheet. This is something that's going to help with sight reading because instead of looking at the sheet and using the acronyms to name each individual note, which you might get pretty good at, we can just name the first note and then we'll use intervals to count up or down from there. So if the first note in a piece of music is a C, I can just label that as the first note, and from there I can just look, am I going up? Am I going down? Am I going up by 2 notes, 1 note? What is it? And that's much quicker to read as opposed to naming each individual note that's there. What's going to help here is if we split the intervals on the sheet between even number and odd number. And I'll have a picture showing that up here. This makes it easier to read because all even numbered intervals, so second, fourth, sixth, will always be a combination of one note on a line and the other one on a space. So either line to space or space to line is always even interval. Then odd number intervals are always only one or the other. So line to line or space to space. So when looking at 2 notes, that's the first thing I look for. Whether we're playing them at the same time or whether we're playing them one after the other. I look at even or odd, and that helps me narrow it down by getting rid of half of the possibilities there. So if you have a note on a space first, the next line up or down would be a second. The next line after that would be a fourth, and then sixth, and then eighth. If I'm starting on a space and the next space up or down is the next note, then that'd be a third. Space to 2 spaces up would be a fifth. Next space above that would be a seventh. And I know it's new, it's unfamiliar, so it's something that will take a bit of practice to get down, but it really is so useful on the piano, especially when you're reading chords that have multiple notes to them. And here's another image showing all those intervals from first to eighth. First might also be called unison because you're just playing the same note, and you can see it labeled as that here. And remember, first is just playing the same note again. 1 is an odd number, and that still fits our system of line to line or space to space for the odds. And then second, we have line and space mixed. Third, line to line or space to space. And then it keeps going on for fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and the eighth or octave. And that's going to cover the knowledge portion of this lesson. I've got some sheets we'll go ahead and practice with next. So let's go ahead and look at some exercises now. I'll have this one right up on the screen. We're starting off with the treble clef, and we've got 5 different intervals we're going to look at. They're all just going to be numbers 1 through 5. So to start off, I'm going to put my right thumb on a G, right there. And I'm going to use these intervals to figure out what I'm going to play without actually naming the second notes in here. I'm just going to think about the interval number I'm moving up. And since it's all 1 through 5, it's just going to be the finger number that's going to play. So for this, we have G, and this is a line to a space. That's going to be even. The space directly above it would be a second. I'm the space above that. So that's going to make this a fourth. So from G, I'm going to play that 4 finger right there. And we can find out that that's actually a C. Next one, I've got G, and same note again. I'm going to play G. We call that the first interval. Next one, I'm playing G, and then I'm going 1 line up. Line to line is an odd interval. It's just 1 line up, so I know it's going to be a third. So G, and then my 3 finger is G to B. Next, G starting again, line to line, so this is going to be odd again. It's bigger than that third, so this one's going to be the 5th. 1 finger, 5 finger, so that means it's G to D. Next one, we've got line and space. This is going to be an even one, just 1 space up. That's that smallest even interval, so that's going to be a second. 1 and 2 finger, G to A. And that's it for that one. Let's go ahead and look at this next line. That's going to be the bass clef. We'll switch to our left hand. So for this one, if this is bass clef, we can have that starting note. That is going to be G, B, D. So that's a D as our starting note right there. And just for simplicity with these intervals, I'm going to play that with just my right thumb again, just so we can count this out a bit easier. So I'm starting off on D, And this is line to line, which means it's going to be odd. And it's not one line up, but it's the second line above that. So that's going to be a fifth. So I can play my 1 finger and my 5 finger. And that's what we got, a fifth. That is D to A. Next, first note is D. You can see we have our first sharp in here. And so if I was doing this without the sharp, I'd just be playing D. Looking at that, it's line to line. It's a small gap, so I know that's going to be the third. So it's the 1 and 5 finger, or 1 and 3 finger, sorry, 1 and 3, which would be D to F. Because the sharp symbol's next to it, I'm going to just play that as F sharp. Still a third, because F sharp is just a form of F. I'm still going to count this as just a regular third. And that's how it would go with any sharp or flat included in a piece. Whether it's an accidental or whether it's a part of the key signature, we're just looking at, okay, F sharp, I would count that out the same as I would just D to F, because F sharp is just a form of the natural key of F. Likewise, if I had a flat, and say I had a piece that was playing D, E, F, and then it had a G flat, I would count that G flat as a fourth, because it's a form of G that I'm playing in the piece. We assume with that key signature, if I do have a G flat as a part of it, I'm likely not going to be playing a regular G, so that G flat takes the place of that fourth. So whether there's accidentals, whether we're looking at a key signature, the black key is going to replace whatever white natural it would be. So F sharp takes the place of F, G flat takes the place of G, and so on for the rest of them. So with that in mind, this is still just a third, D and F sharp. And the next one we have line to space. That is looking like a very small interval. It's the smallest one we can do with evens. So that's going to be 1 and 2, second interval, D to E. After that, I've got, looks like it's exactly the same, line to line. That's a first, D and D. And last one, line to space. That's an even interval. That's going to be a fourth. So D and then 4 finger. That's a G. All right, I hope that's helpful for you to get an idea of just using those finger numbers to count. What I'm going to look at now here is a different kind of exercise that's just getting you really in the hang of not naming all those notes, just a very simple 1 note at a time melody to just kind of get your head in the mindset of that. It's these simpler melodies where this is really helpful to use. So I'll go ahead and put this one on the screen. Just the number 1 next to it. This is going to be just a few notes here, and there's no clef here, so we can just assign to whatever we want. I'll go with just the treble clef. So if this was the treble clef, the first note here would be a G. So I'll go ahead and play G. And after that, I'm not naming notes. I'm just looking, am I going up or am I going down? Because this is only 1 note at a time. It's not going to skip. It's just going to be G to A to B, B to A, anything like that. So G, you can see I'm going up 1. That'll be that A there. Up another. Up another. Up another. You should be on your pinky on D now. Down 1. Then up 1. So all together. And I don't have to pay attention to what notes I'm playing as long as I know that I'm following the interval gaps included here. Now let's go to one that's going to be a little bit harder. This one's going to have what's called hops in it, where we're not just going to be playing notes right next to each other. We're going to have a couple jumps in here where you're going to see third intervals. As opposed to all being second, moving up 1 note at a time, we're going to have a couple thirds in here. So we're going to look out for 2 hops where it'll be line to line or space to space. And again, I'll assume treble clef. If this is treble clef, that first note is a D. So I'll play D right there. And I'm just going to look up. Am I going up or am I going down? So still mixed of space and line. I know I'm just going up 1 note. So D to E, keep going. Up another, up another. You should have your pinky on A right now. And look, we got a space to space, so this is our hop down. This is a third, so I'm going to go down to F, play F again, go down 1, back up 1, up 1, Oop, this is a line to a line. That's going to be a third. Skip over a note. So I'm going to skip over A and play B. Down 1, back up 1, up 1, up 1, and play that twice. So we should be finishing off on playing 2 Ds there. And that's how you can use this. Again, not paying attention to note names, just looking at those interval gaps. And I'm just going to do one more here to finish off. I'm going to look at this piece, and I'm not going to worry about playing both of these together. We'll just do one at a time. So just the right hand here. Again, I'm just going to name this first note. This first note for the treble clef is going to be a C. So go ahead and find that C with your right thumb. And then I'm just looking at my gaps. That's a second right there. I'm just going up 1 note. So C to D, back down 1 note to C. Then after that bar line, you can see I'm just going back up 1 note. I should be on D. Up 1 note again, just down 1 note. After that bar line, back up 1 note, up 1 note, up 1 note. And this is a trickier one. Let's see, it's line to space. The space right below would be a second. The one below that would be a fourth. This is actually a 6th down. So pinky to thumb would be a 5th. I'm going to stretch 1 more and my thumb should be on B. From that B, I'm just going up 1 note, and that should be to middle C. That's a whole note. After the bar line is a D, and finishing off on 1 note higher, the E. And that's it. Left hand now. We're going to actually play a couple notes together here. So we'll use those intervals to practice playing chords or those harmonic intervals. So bass clef, let's count this out. That's going to be a C with a note that is space to space above it. Not a third, because that'd be the space above, but it's going to be a 5th. So that's going to be C, and then that's going to be pinky to thumb. So C and G together there. I'm going to play that a few times. 1, 2, 5, and then I'm changing it up here. I'm at that next bar line of measure 3. So the first note is the same one I've been playing with my pinky there. I'm going up 1 note, up 1 more note, then down a note, down a note. This one's going to be a third, so I'm going to skip a note and go up 2. So we should be on E. A third again, space to space, so make sure you skip a note here up to G. Third down, down 1 note, up a third here, so make sure you skip a note, up 1 note, and this one is space to line going down there, not a second because that'd be the line below. This is going to be a 4th down. I'm currently on my thumb. I'm going to go down to my ring finger to make that a 4th down, and we should be on D now, and we finish off with what we started with, that harmonic 5th, C and G. Thank you for tuning into this lesson on intervals. Again, a great tool for piano, especially because we play with 2 hands. We have 2 clefs to read, and we often will be playing chords with our hands, which is multiple notes together. So hopefully reading these intervals is going to be a nice tool for you going forward to help you with your reading. All right, have fun playing.